When Earth fell 2 centuries ago, humanity scattered among the stars like dust blown by the wind. They became wanderers, settlers, scavengers, a fading species that no one expected to survive. Most alien races saw humans as stubborn relics of a forgotten world, but some whispered that there was something dangerous about them, a fire that never went out. Captain Elias Varon carried that fire inside him. He was commander of the Horizon's Edge, a long-range exploration vessel that roamed the Orion Rift. For most of his adult life, Elias had known only empty space and silence. He had lost family, friends, and even faith in the idea of home. But humans didn't quit, and he wasn't about to start. Then, on a cold patrol night near the edge of known space, he met her. Her name was Lyra, a scientist from the alien race known as the Seraphim. Tall, luminous beings with silver-blue skin and eyes that shimmered like starlight. Her people were known for logic, order, and emotional restraint. They didn't laugh. They didn't cry. They didn't love. And yet, when Elias looked at her across the transparent table of the diplomatic station on Carveth Prime, something inside him changed. Lyra had come to negotiate a resource treaty. Elias was there to escort the human delegation. But when their eyes met, the noise of the room, the politics, the chatter, the tension, faded into silence. He didn't know what it was at first, only that her calm gaze held a quiet curiosity that broke through her kind's usual detachment. When the meeting ended, she approached him. "You are human," she said softly. Her voice had an echo like wind over crystal. Elias smiled. "Last time I checked. Your kind is difficult to understand," Lyra admitted. "You burn too fast. You feel too much," he chuckled. "That's probably true, but it keeps us alive." She tilted her head, studying him as if he were some kind of puzzle. "Perhaps that is why you still survive. Fire resists extinction." That night, as the stars shimmered over Carveth Prime, they talked again, not as officer and envoy, but as two lost souls from different worlds. Elias told her about Earth, about oceans and sunsets and rain, things she had never seen. Lyra listened, her expression unreadable, but her eyes softened each time he described something beautiful. For the first time in years, Elias felt seen, truly seen. Weeks passed. Their missions overlapped, and soon they worked together on a joint expedition to investigate a derelict station orbiting a dying star. It was supposed to be a simple survey, but fate had other plans. The station was not empty. When they entered the silent halls, shadows moved. The station belonged to the Rinkar, a hostile machine species that had declared war on all organic life decades ago. Their drones attacked without warning, and within minutes chaos erupted. Elias and Lyra fought side by side. Blaster fire scorched the walls, metal screamed, and alarms echoed through the corridors. Elias took command, shouting orders, guiding the human and Seraphim team members toward the escape pods. Lyra covered him with energy pulses that crackled like lightning from her gauntlet. But then a blast tore through the floor. The shockwave threw them apart. Elias slammed into a wall, his vision blurred, ears ringing. When he looked up, he saw Lyra trapped beneath debris, struggling to free herself as sparks rained down. Without hesitation, Elias ran to her. "Leave me," she gasped. "Your people, they need you." "Not leaving you," he shouted. "Not ever." He pulled at the metal with his bare hands, ignoring the heat that seared his skin. He managed to free her, but the station's hull was collapsing. They sprinted toward the last pod, but a Rinkar drone intercepted them, its weapon charging. Elias raised his blaster and fired. The bolt struck true, but the explosion hurled him backward. Lyra caught him just before he hit the ground. Her cool hand steadied his shoulders, and for a brief, perfect second, they looked at each other, human fire and Seraphim calm colliding in the chaos of destruction. The escape pod launched just as the station went nova. They drifted for hours in silence, surrounded by stars. Elias's arm was burned and his uniform torn, but his grin never faded. Lyra sat across from him, staring out the viewport. "You risked your life for me," she said quietly. "Yeah," he replied. "That's what humans do." "Why?" "Because sometimes one person is worth the risk." She turned to look at him then, her expression unreadable but her voice softer. "You are reckless, Captain," he smiled faintly. "You say that like it's a bad thing." That was the moment the universe changed for both of them. Back at the Seraphim Council, Lyra's people condemned her for emotional compromise. To them, love was weakness, a corruption of reason. The humans too warned Elias to stay away. The treaty was fragile, and an interspecies affair could destroy it. But the more they tried to keep them apart, the stronger his feelings grew. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was her calm voice that soothed his restless heart, or the way she looked at him like she saw the man beneath the uniform. For the first time since Earth's fall, Elias felt hope. Still, the universe wasn't done testing them. When the Seraphim High Council ordered Lyra back to her homeworld for evaluation, Elias received a sealed message from her. Inside, a single line glowed across the datapad screen. "They will take me away. Do not follow, please." He stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, "Like hell I won't." As Horizon's Edge powered up for an unauthorized jump toward Seraphim space, Elias stood on the bridge, eyes burning with determination. His crew watched in silence, knowing their captain had crossed a line no one dared to cross before. But that was the thing about humans. They loved recklessly. They fought hopeless battles, and sometimes they changed the stars because of it. The engines roared to life. The ship vanished into the endless dark, chasing the faint light of a woman who was never supposed to love. And for the first time in ages, the universe trembled, because a human dared to love what it said he couldn't. The Seraphim homeworld Oralis was nothing like Earth. It floated in the light of 3 suns, its skies painted in silver and violet. The cities shimmered with crystal towers, and the air itself seemed to hum with perfect order. Everything on Oralis was designed for harmony, emotionless, precise, balanced, and into that perfect calm came Horizon's Edge, roaring through the clouds like a defiant heartbeat. Captain Elias Varon stood on the command deck, his hands steady on the console. His crew had begged him to turn back, but there was no changing his mind. He had received Lyra's message and her plea for him not to follow, and read it again and again. But the more he read, the more he felt that fire inside him grow. "She's not a mission," he said quietly. "She's my reason." The Horizon's Edge broke through the planetary defense grid before the Seraphim could react. Warning lights flashed as interceptors launched, sleek and silver like shards of moonlight. "Captain, they're locking on," shouted Lieutenant Mayers. "Then we make them think twice," Elias said, calm but fierce. The humans fought like cornered lions. Their ship wasn't built for war, but it was built by human hands, and that meant it had spirit. They dodged plasma bursts, dived through atmospheric storms, and outsmarted the Seraphim fleet long enough to reach the surface. When they finally crash-landed in the outskirts of the capital city, Elias climbed out of the wreck with a bleeding shoulder and a grin. The world around him was bright and cold, too clean, too silent. His boots left dark marks on the shining streets. He didn't care who tried to stop him. He was here for Lyra. Lyra, meanwhile, sat in confinement within the Hall of Clarity, the Seraphim's place of discipline. The walls glowed softly, responding to the calm of those inside. But Lyra's heart wasn't calm anymore. She had been questioned for days. "Why did you risk your mission for him?" the elders asked. "Why did you allow emotion to cloud your logic?" She had no answer they would accept. She only knew that when Elias looked at her, she felt alive. But her people didn't understand life like that. To them, emotion was a sickness. Love was a virus, and Elias was its carrier. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear his voice under that rough, warm tone that sounded like thunder and laughter mixed together. She remembered the way he said, "Not leaving you. Not ever." And somewhere deep in her heart, a whisper answered, "Then I won't stop waiting." Outside the hall, the Seraphim guards were in chaos. A human was coming, alone. Elias moved through the streets, evading patrols and sensors, guided by a small beacon, a signal Lyra had once given him for emergencies. It pulsed faintly on his wrist display, leading him to her. He had faced pirates, warlords, and machine armies, but this was different. This wasn't about survival. This was about love in defiance of reason. When the guards finally confronted him near the hall, Elias didn't reach for his weapon. He simply stood tall. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here for her." The Seraphim commander's face was unreadable. "Your presence here is forbidden. Leave or be erased." "Erase me then," Elias said. "But know this, you can cage a person, not a soul. You can silence a voice, not a heartbeat. The commander hesitated. Humans were unpredictable, wild, irrational, dangerous. In that hesitation, Elias moved. He dashed through the energy barriers, took 2 hits of stun fire, but still kept going. Pain tore through him, but his will was stronger than any weapon. When he reached the main chamber, the guards finally overpowered him. He fell to his knees, bruised, blood trickling down his cheek. And there, behind a glass wall, stood Lyra. Elias. Her voice cracked, breaking the silence of the chamber. He looked up, smiling through the pain. Told you I'd find you. The elders entered, their glowing robes moving like liquid light. Human, one said coldly. You have broken sacred law. You bring chaos. Elias laughed weakly. That's what humans do best. Lyra pressed her hand against the glass. Please don't hurt him. The elder turned to her. He infected you with emotion. We must purify your mind. Something inside her snapped. For centuries, her people had preached logic, order, balance. But now, as she saw Elias kneeling, bleeding because of her, she understood something profound. Emotion was not a weakness. It was life. With a sudden surge of energy, Lyra shattered the glass barrier. The fragments floated mid-air as she used her psionic power to hold them back. Her eyes glowed bright white as she stepped forward facing the elders. I will not let you take him, she said. The elders recoiled. You defy your kind? I embrace what you fear, she answered. I have seen the truth. Emotion gives purpose. Love gives strength. The guards tried to intervene, but Lyra's power flared. She didn't harm them, only pushed them back with waves of pure force, enough to make them drop their weapons. Elias, still struggling to stand, reached her side. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. And miss this? He said with a grin. Not a chance. Together they fled through the hall, alarms echoing behind them. The Seraphin guards pursued, but Elias and Lyra were a storm, his courage and her power intertwining in perfect chaos. They reached the outer courtyard, where Seraphin ships were already closing in. The horizon's edge was half destroyed and couldn't fly. Escape seemed impossible. Elias looked at the horizon, then at Lyra. What happens if we get caught? He asked. They'll separate us, she said softly. Erase my memories. Send you to the void. He smiled faintly. Then we don't get caught. The couple found an old transport drone hidden near the archives. Small, fragile, barely functional. It wasn't meant for space travel, but humans had a history of making the impossible work. As the engines sputtered to life, Lyra looked back at her city. They will call me a traitor, she said. Elias reached for her hand. Then be the first traitor to teach them what love means. They launched into the sky, pursued by Seraphin interceptors. Plasma bolts streaked past, lighting up the clouds. The drone shook violently as Elias forced it higher, his hands gripping the controls with all the strength he had left. Elias, the thrusters can't hold, Lyra warned. They don't have to hold, he said. Just have to believe. The drone broke through the atmosphere, flames licking its hull. One more hit and they'd be vaporized. But then something unexpected happened. A dozen human ships appeared out of hyperspace. The Horizon's Edge crew had called for backup. The human Free Fleet, a small but fierce group of survivors, had answered the call. Captain Varen, came a voice over the comm. We thought you might need a little help. Elias laughed. You always did know me too well. The fleet engaged the Seraphin interceptors, buying them enough time to dock with a friendly vessel. When the drone finally landed in the hangar, Elias collapsed, exhausted but alive. Lyra knelt beside him, tears glowing faintly on her silver skin. You're safe, she whispered. He smiled. We're safe, together. For a long moment, they just sat there, human and Seraphin, fire and starlight. 2 hearts beating in a universe that said they shouldn't exist together. Outside, the stars burned quietly. The war wasn't over. The councils on both sides would rage. But something had changed. A human had crossed forbidden lines for love. And an alien had broken her world's oldest law to stand beside him. They didn't know what came next. Exile, war or peace. But they knew one thing. They would face it together. Because when humanity loved, it didn't ask for permission. It simply loved, recklessly, fiercely, and without regret. The Horizon's Edge had survived the chase, but the war was far from over. Captain Elias Varen sat in the command chair, his shoulders still bandaged, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. Beside him, Lyra adjusted the energy calibrator of a repaired drone, her luminous fingers glowing faintly as she worked. "We can't hide forever," Elias said quietly. "The Seraphin Council will send more ships. They'll hunt us across the galaxy." Lyra looked at him, her calm blue eyes softened with determination. "We don't need to hide. We need to change the way they see us. Change the way they see love." Elias smiled. "That sounds dangerously human." "It is," she said simply. "And humans. They survive danger better than anyone." It was true. Humanity had survived wars, plague, exile, and extinction. And now, humans and one alien woman were about to prove that love was stronger than fear. The first step was returning to Aralis, not to beg forgiveness, but to show the Council that humanity was not to be dismissed. The horizon's edge, patched with whatever scraps the Free Fleet could spare, lifted from its hidden hangar. Elias plotted a course for the capital city, Lyra at his side, her calm guiding his recklessness. When they entered Seraphin space, alarms erupted across the planetary network. Starships scrambled, energy beams flared, and the Council issued ultimatums. But Elias was not intimidated. A voice rang out over the ship's comm. "Captain Varen, you are trespassing. Leave now or face annihilation." Elias leaned forward. "Tell them we're coming in peace, with the truth." Landing in the capital was no easy task. The streets were lined with Seraphin soldiers, and the Council awaited them in the Hall of Harmony, their robes flowing, faces cold and unreadable. But Elias stepped out of the ship, armor scratched, uniform torn, chest heaving with determination. Lyra took his hand, linking her light with his fire, and together they entered the hall. The Council watched, unblinking. "You are defiant," said the Elder of Laws. "You bring chaos." Elias held his gaze. "No, we bring life. We bring proof that love is not chaos. It is strength, it is hope, it is survival." Murmurs echoed through the chamber. Humans had stood against impossible odds before. Humans had crossed galaxies for causes impossible to understand. And now one human had crossed their galaxy for love. Lyra stepped forward. "My people fear emotion because they think it weakens logic. But Captain Varen showed me, and all of you, that love doesn't weaken. It guides, it inspires, it strengthens." The Council was silent. Their logic struggled to understand. Love was not quantifiable. Love did not obey algorithms. Yet here it was, defying every expectation. Embodied in a human and one of their own, and then something remarkable happened. The human Free Fleet appeared in orbit, projecting a message of peace and warning. Elias had sent it earlier, not as a threat but as proof of humanity's reach and resilience. The humans would not bow. The humans would not surrender. The humans would fight to protect what they loved. The Council watched the fleet, and then they looked at Lyra and Elias. Something inside them shifted. They had taught their kind to fear emotion, but here was proof that emotion could bring unity, courage, and brilliance. Finally, the Elder of Laws spoke. "If what you say is true, then perhaps our understanding is incomplete." Lyra's hand squeezed Elias's. His heart raced. For years he had been told that humans were weak, fragile, irrelevant, and yet now he stood at the center of a galactic awakening. "We will not apologize for love," Elias said firmly, "nor should anyone else. It is what makes us human, and it is why we endure." Over the following weeks, humanity and the Seraphin began a cautious collaboration. Humans taught Seraphin how to embrace emotion without losing reason. Seraphin taught humans advanced techniques of energy control and psionic technology. Wars were avoided, treaties rewritten, and a new era dawned. Not because one side conquered the other, but because two sides learned from each other. Elias and Lyra became symbols of this change. Stories of the human captain and the Seraphin scientist spread through the stars, a tale of courage, defiance, and the power of reckless love. Children of both species grew up hearing their story, dreaming of a universe where boundaries could be crossed without fear. And through it all, Elias and Lyra never wavered. One night, standing on the balcony of the newly built Human-Seraphin Joint Research Station, Elias watched the stars with Lyra beside him. The city below shimmered in harmony, lights reflecting the new unity between species. "You changed everything," Lyra said softly. "No," Elias replied. "You changed me. You showed me that love, can be the spark that ignites hope in the darkest places. Lyra smiled faintly. And you showed me that fire, reckless as it is, can teach even the coldest hearts to feel. They leaned together, watching the stars, two beings from different worlds joined by a bond that had defied laws, armies, and expectations. A transmission arrived from Earth's remnants, still scattered across distant systems. It read, "Your courage has reminded humanity who we are. We will carry this light forward," Elias grinned. "Looks like we've started something bigger than ourselves." Lyra took his hand, holding it firmly. "Then let's make sure it lasts." And in that moment, the universe seemed quieter, softer, and as if it, too, recognized the power of their union. Humans had survived extinction, scattered among the stars, and now they had reminded the galaxy why they endured, not because of weapons or numbers, not because of technology or cunning, but because humans loved, fiercely, recklessly, and without apology. And sometimes that love could change worlds. Months later, the first joint human-seraphin expedition launched to explore a new star system. Elias and Lyra stood at the helm, hand in hand, hearts beating in perfect synchrony. "Where to next?" Elias asked. "Wherever the stars take us," Lyra replied, and together they flew into the unknown, a human and a seraphin, fearless in love and unstoppable in spirit, a living proof that no law, no council, no universe could ever keep hearts from finding one another, because humans didn't wait for permission. They didn't calculate limits. They simply loved, and when they did, they could change everything. The stars shone brighter that night, not from the suns, but from a fire that no darkness could extinguish.